So Iron Man is the father of the Silver Surfer, in my view. And I don't mean in terms of story continuity. I don't think that there's ever any secret origin issue that states that effect. I don't think that's officially part of the Marvel Universe. But as a comic book artist myself, I'm not well known, but I am one. If you want to look up my pseudonym, it's Sandez Rey, R-E-Y. And I'm actually wearing my Robot Jungle Girl t-shirt at the moment. I don't wear this t-shirt very much anymore because it's getting a little tight around the beer belly and the sagging old man boobs. But, you know, I'm 57 years old. A little bit of that is to be expected at this point. I've been a hard man most of my life, and now I'm starting to soften up a little bit. I'll have to work on that. But I am a comic book artist. Not popular, as I said, or well-read, but I think I know a little bit about comic book art. And I think that artistically, that if Jack Kirby had not been put on the Avengers, which was not a job he was really lobbying for, and he was not kept there very long, if he had not been put on the Avengers by Stan Lee, I don't think there would have ever been a Silver Surfer. Now let me explain. And I'm going to do this very briefly. And I'm going to hold up some art from these various books. Like here's my Avengers book. So you can see what I'm talking about. Now, I've shown art before flat on a table with the tripod up above, you know, looking down on it. So holding it up is kind of an experiment. But it hasn't worked out horribly when I've held up DVD boxes, and I think those have shown up pretty well. So, and I think people like to see what the person who's talking, like to understand who it is that's expressing the opinion. So I'm going to try holding this art up. It's kind of an experiment. If it doesn't work out, if I don't like it when I watch the video, I'll just delete the video. So and redo it a different way. But I'm coming off the night shift. So after I cut this video, I am going to go to bed. I won't be watching it right away. It'll still be uploading when I'm sound asleep. But if it doesn't work, I will delete it off. Now, the Avengers. Why do I say the Avengers was not a job that Jack was lobbying for? We all know that Jack Kirby was an extremely game fellow, willing to do what he was told in many cases by editors, very much a team player, perhaps even too much of a team player at times for his own good. By the way, Jack Kirby, also a war hero, fought in World War II with great distinction. Not very many people know this, but Jack Kirby fought all the way across Europe in many battles and had a very dangerous job where he was the person that would run unspooling the wire, the telephone wire that connected the front to the rear echelon troops. And so he would advance with the front of the battle, and he would not have his gun in his hand because he had to unspool this massive wire, which I think was strapped to his back. But so he wasn't really able to fight. He was just able to follow the very fiercest part of the fight, right behind it, unspooling that wire. Very, very dangerous job. And Jack Kirby was only taken out of action because at the Battle of the Bulge, before the battle started, Jack Kirby's feet were so badly frostbitten that he couldn't walk. He had to be taken to a hospital, and they very nearly amputated his feet, is what I understand. And they decided to save his feet, but it was about a month to recover to where he could walk again and was fully mobile. So that's a little backstory on Jack Kirby, great war hero, great comic artist, my personal opinion, the greatest artist in the history of American comics, very possibly a contender, definitely a contender for greatest artist in the history of comics all around the world. Interesting thing about Jack Kirby, he liked science fiction. In fact, he said in an interview that he still had, in the 70s, I believe, that he still had a stack of old science fiction pulps from the 30s in his closet, which I don't doubt. Put many science fictional aspects into his work. The one aspect that he really was not interested in, apparently, was robots. If you look at Jack Kirby's Golden Age work, which was prodigious, I mean, he started drawing comics in the 1930s, so the Golden Age, comic fans disagree about when exactly the Golden Age of comics ends, but we all agree that the 30s and 40s are included. So let's just say 20 years of Jack Kirby's output, and he put out a lot of pages in the Golden Age. In the first 20 years of his career, when you look at the titles, and I've got all the reprints, when you look at Captain America and Boy Commandos and Newsboy Legion and Sandman and all these various titles, you're very hard pressed to find a robot. Even though robots were very common in some comic artists' work, they were not common in Jack Kirby's work at all. And Jack Kirby also didn't do a lot of armored characters. He didn't do a lot of metallic characters at all. So in the 1960s, and I don't know why that was, perhaps he didn't really feel confident about the way he was rendering the reflectability of it. And I'm saying that with a purpose, because I'm about to talk about that. Rendering reflectability in a black and white ink drawing is very tricky. And some artists have a natural touch for it. But it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of work. I flatter myself to think that if you look at my work, if you look at Robot Jungle Girl, for example, I render reflectability very well. It's something that I've practiced a lot over the years, and I like doing metallic type surfaces. So because I liked it, I've done a lot of metallic type surfaces and characters. And I studied, when I first started studying how to do reflectability, I looked at Jack Kirby from the post-Silver Surfer era, like the New World Jack Kirby at the DC Comics. Jack Kirby's Fourth World, not New World, Fourth World. Sorry, I've been up all night. But if I look at Jack Kirby's Fourth World, if I look at the Silver Surfer appearances, particularly later in the Fantastic Four, if you look at the last volumes of work that Jack Kirby did at Marvel in my Marvel Essentials, we see that Jack Kirby, I studied the way Jack Kirby did reflectability, but I studied the way he did it in the late 60s and early 70s on through the end of his career. And Jack Kirby had developed by that time what I would call a line and squiggle method. I think other people have called it that. And I'm going to show you a little of that in a moment. But basically, it's a line. I got to get my hand in front of the camera. It's a line and a little squiggle and then another line. It's like line, squiggle, line. And this, for some reason, is very appealing to the eye. I don't know why, but Jack Kirby discovered it was very appealing to an eye, and he started putting that kind of line, squiggle signature on basically a lot of his surfaces, including a lot of the surfaces that weren't even metallic. And towards the end of the career, I think his career, which was one of the longest careers in comics, I think he may have even been doing it a little bit much. He could have possibly dialed it back a little. But yeah, the way he wound up ultimately doing reflectability was great. And it's something that I studied from the beginning of my studying of how to do reflectability. But he didn't start out great. He didn't, like as I said, he didn't really draw metallic characters much in the Golden Age. And he had, you know, I mean, with the Challenges of the Unknown and a few strips, he had a giant robot here and a spaceship there that required a little bit of reflectability. But he never really had a character. Before he was put on the Avengers, he never really had a character that required reflectability every time he appeared. He never really had an armored or robotic character as a regular character. Now, the reason Jack Kirby didn't really want to be on the Avengers is because Jack Kirby liked to create new characters. He did not like recycling characters. In fact, he was against putting the Human Torch, who was created by Carl Burgos back in the 30s, he was against putting the Human Torch in the Fantastic Four. That was Stan Lee's idea. Jack Kirby didn't like recycling characters. He liked to just create new characters. And when the Avengers was started, the concept was not, we're going to put our best characters in the Super Team book. Far from it. The original Avengers were a bunch of B-list characters that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby both felt really couldn't make it on their own. And so they were going to put them together, and Stan's idea was to put them together in a book and build up their popularity so that they would become popular enough to have their own books. And when you look at the original lineup of the Avengers, was, and I'm just going to try and show you a little bit of this. The problem is I can't see it when I'm holding it up. Okay. The original lineup of the Avengers was Iron Man, Ant-Man, Hulk, and Thor. Now, I should point out that you may not remember this, but the Hulk comic lasted 5 issues and was canceled. Yeah. After he became popular again because of the Avengers, he had another comic launched, which they had first launched him in half-issue stories, and then it ultimately became his own comic, or he ultimately transitioned into his own comic. But Hulk was a character that had appeared briefly and was canceled. Okay, Thor was a character from an anthology title, Journey into Mystery. He was not considered a good candidate for having his own book named after him. Iron Man was a character who appeared, I believe, in Tales of Suspense, but Iron Man was another character like Hulk, who had never had a full book to himself. He had split a book with a different character, and I think they changed the character several times, but he had split a book. His stories were only half a book, and Ant-Man had a series of half-book stories in, he had started out as a character in one of the monster titles, but he had a series of half-book stories in a different anthology title. So Thor was the only one of these characters who had a whole book to himself, and Thor's book wasn't titled Thor. It was titled Journey into Mystery. They hadn't really made the commitment to make it Thor yet. Iron Man and Ant-Man were characters that had only appeared in half-book stories, and Hulk was a character that had appeared in 5 full-length issues, then was canceled, then was in Avengers, then was brought back as a half-book character for a long time before he became a full-book character in his own title. Okay, and then Captain America, of course, very quickly joins the group too. Captain America was a character that they had just revived from the Golden Age. They had just created this storyline to say that he had been frozen in ice since World War II. And I don't think either Stan or Jack had any tremendous confidence that he would catch on in the 60s. I think they both sort of felt that he was a character from the World War II era, and it was really iffy if he would catch on or not, because he's an extremely corny character with an extremely patriotic costume. And nothing against that. God bless him. I love Captain America. He's a great character, in my opinion. But Captain America wasn't stuck in the Avengers because he was their big selling character. Captain America also was in half-book adventures. I believe in Tales of Suspense also. For a long time before he got his own title. So none of these characters were characters that were A-list characters. These were B-list characters at the time the Avengers was launched. And the Avengers very successfully made them into A-list characters. And Iron Man, I don't believe, would have ever gotten his own book if it were not for the Avengers, you know, propping him up. And the Avengers had a lot to do, although Thor and Hulk didn't stay in the Avengers very long because they didn't really fit in the super team. But I think it had a lot to do with reviving their popularity, reviving Hulk's popularity. I think Thor already was fairly popular, but increasing Thor's popularity and reviving the Hulk's popularity. Avengers, very important book in developing the Marvel Universe. Let's get to some of the art. Okay, so let's go right to, I think I lost a bookmark. All right, well, let's go right to this, yeah, which I already showed you. Now look at Iron Man. It takes a little waving for me to find the sweet spot, okay? Look at Iron Man. Okay, do you see the reflection on Iron Man? I've not got the spot right. Okay. Look at the reflection on Iron Man's armor, okay? Is it good? It's just a bunch of lines that don't really communicate reflectability very well. And this is inked by Dick Ayers, who's a perfectly good inker. It's not a case of the inker ruining it. Okay, let's skip to another issue. Iron Man has changed his armor, and here he is. Well, I got the sweet spot. Now look at the lines on the face of Iron Man. Okay, again, is that a good example of reflectability? It's mediocre. And this is inked by a different artist, Paul Reinman. Very competent artist, Paul Reinman. Not all of his Silver Age work was great, but very competent artist. Here we have, I believe here we have a cover, inked by yet a third inker, Artie Simic. Now look at Iron Man. Notice how the reflectability is being done now, not so much with lines, but with blotches. Okay, with spots. You see Iron Man back here? Okay. See those blotchy spots? That's how Jack is now reflecting, doing reflectability. And this is just the next issue. Okay, now that may be a difference in the style of inker, but I don't believe it's that big of a difference in the style of inker. I think both Artie Simek and Paul Ryman are perfectly capable of interpreting what the artist did. I think that this is, and this is consistent throughout the book. Here's another Iron Man shot. This is consistent throughout the book that the reflectability is now blotchier and less reliant on just parallel lines. Okay, let's move on to another quick shot. Oh, that's a 5-minute warning. Boy, I gotta wrap this video up pretty soon. Let's move on to a very quick shot. Now here's yet another, no, this is still Paul Ryman. This is not another inker. Okay, you see Iron Man here? Now, the blotchiness has been dialed back a little bit. And we're seeing a little bit of the line coming back, but it's a jagged line. It's down the legs there. It's a squiggly line. Okay, but it's not a line squiggle line like Jack later evolved into. It's just a real squiggly line. Now here's a real good inker, Chick Stone. I don't think anyone would dispute that Chick Stone is a good inker. Okay, look at Iron Man over there on the left, I guess, of your image. Okay, this is Iron Man. Oh, I'm on the wrong side. This is Iron Man. Got to figure out how the weathermen do this. Now look at the way it's being done now. Jack is experimenting here. You see him clearly experimenting with the way reflectability is rendered. He's tried parallel lines. He's tried thicker lines, blotchier images. He's tried using more bloopy ink, and now he's sort of mixing it up between lines and squiggles a little bit, and blotches. But he still hasn't really decided. You see, Jack Kirby is such a great artist. A great artist, when they have a problem and they're not happy with the way they're doing it, they work on it. They don't just, you know, try to avoid the problem or try not to show the character. They are going to, a great artist will work on it and develop what they're doing to the point where they can be happy themselves. Now, Stan Lee would be happy if he just continued to draw parallel lines, you know, like he did in the first issue. Stan Lee would be fine with any one of these techniques, but the fact that Jack Kirby, within and this is a very short space of issues, because frankly, Jack Kirby, I'm just going to look up the number, he only did the first 8 issues. Okay, and I didn't even show you anything from, I don't think, 7 or 8. So, I mean, that was like within the first 6 issues. The way that he changed his approach to reflectability was in that much transition over the course of just 8 issues. In other words, this is one of those rare moments where you can look at Jack Kirby's art and say, huh, he's actually kind of struggling with something. He's actually not satisfied with the way his rendering is coming out. Now, he's not the one wielding the ink brush or the pen. I should stipulate that. And in most of these inkers, it was a brush, most of the time. But the inker is following his pencil work, and Jack Kirby is not happy with the way the reflectability is coming out. And we know he's not happy because he keeps changing his approach to it. Now, if I just look up a date here for you, because these Avengers issues came out, and they have a date here in the table of contents, I believe. Or they don't. Okay. The Avengers issues came out in 1963, and possibly some of 1964. Now, let's fast forward to Fantastic Four, Volume 3. This is where the Silver Surfer first appears. And by the time this book came out, they actually started putting... No, they didn't. I was going to say they started putting table of contents in, but this one doesn't have a table of contents either, which is sad because those table of contents contain interesting information like dates. Okay, so I don't have... I'm going to look up the date from the indicia. The indicia is the small fine print that you find in the beginning of the book. Okay, Fantastic Four number 50 is Fantastic. These comics came out between 65 and 67. So what I'm going to show you is probably 65 or 66. Okay, and what did I say the other one was what? 62, 63. Anyways, you can see there's 2 or 3 years have elapsed there. And I'm just going to show you one more drawing because I know this is kind of annoying. But here's a big drawing. This is the first, I want to get a close look at this. This is the first cover that the Silver Surfer was on. Now the character was actually introduced 2 issues before in Fantastic Four 48, I believe that would be. This is number 50. Here we see an early example of line and squiggle. Now it's not quite evolved into what it will evolve into later, but you can see how much superior the reflectability is on this drawing than it is on any of those Iron Man drawings. And that's 28 minutes. Let's stop. Okay, and this is inked by Joe Synott. Joe Synott is a good inker, but the difference is not Joe Synott. As I said, Art E. Simic, you know, Paul Ryman, Chick Stone, Dick Ayers, those guys are all good inkers too. The difference is Kirby has worked on his reflectability and he's still working on it. He's still working on it because he was dissatisfied with it when he was in the Avengers, and he's still working on it. But he would have never created a character like the Silver Surfer, who's all... Silver Surfer has no costume basically. He has trunks, swimming trunks, and he has a silver reflective body. Jack Kirby had never created a reflective character in his entire career from the 1930s to the 1966 when this probably came out, or 65. That's a 30-year stretch in Jack Kirby's career, 30 years plus. In 30 years of drawing comics, the Silver Surfer is the first character that is metallic all over his body that Jack Kirby would introduce as a regular main character who, you know, a potential, you know, hero with his own book. He's the first reflective character that Jack Kirby ever really did. Jack Kirby wouldn't have done a character whose only costume feature was the fact that they are silver and reflective if he hadn't worked on his reflectability in Avengers and brought it along to a point where he was getting good results and where he was actually interested in drawing reflectability. It actually caught his interest, and we know it caught his interest because the line and squiggle technique continued to evolve after that Silver Surfer drawing that I just showed you. It continued to evolve. So it took Avengers, in my opinion, and this is not based on interviews I've read, I'm simply saying in my opinion, based on examining the art very closely, because I'm an artist and I look at these things very closely. I study Jack Kirby very closely, and looking at the art, it appears to me that Jack Kirby struggled with Iron Man, but his struggles with Iron Man led to him being fascinated with exactly how to portray the reflectability, and he satisfied himself, came up with a solution to the problem that was satisfactory, and because it was so satisfactory, he created a character who was all reflective, the Silver Surfer, which is why I say that Iron Man was artistically the father of the Silver Surfer. It makes sense to me. Anyways, if you like this kind of random shit, like the video. Otherwise, don't. I'm going to go to bed. I might make another video, but I'm going to go to bed, and I'll be seeing you again soon talking more geek stuff.